Thank you for spending your Saturday nights with me.
Sunday morning.
Well, that's a little easier. I was just kidding. I did the homework. I was just getting my notes together, and I was hoping that Sir Jackalus was going to be joining us, but I think it's a little early for my notes together, and I was mute that. Oh, man. So it looks like the winner of the November's new review vote, and it wasn't even close, really. I actually want to get the figures up. So for everyone in the stream, one of the Patreon tiers is you can vote on a monthly new movie review. And so the movies for this month were Captain America: The First Avenger, but really the start of my MCU review series. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Ooh.
Ferris Bueller's... oh, yeah, you gotta get a little echo hearing myself there, Amy. Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Groundhog Day, and Lost in Translation. And sadly, Captain America, Groundhog Day, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off all got the same amount of votes. Second place was Lost in Translation with 21% of the vote. And first place was Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind with 52% of the vote. I'm bad at making competitive polls. Well, welcome, everyone. The episode for today was becoming... I tried to con you guys into watching Go Fish, and it was roundly rejected. And the episodes for today were Becoming Part 1 and 2. And yeah, no Jack. I see notes in the chat. He has the meeting link, but we're going to go without him. So let's see. So the way we normally begin is by watching the previous episode guide for that episode. So let me cue that up real quick. I have not watched this episode guide probably since the month after I released it. So I'm actually kind of curious. Revisiting the guides has been an interesting aspect of doing these rewatches with you. By the way, did anyone... Amy, I know you were there, but did anyone else get a chance to come to the Rabbit rewatch?
I did.
Yes, of course. Excellent. That's pretty fun, right?
Yeah.
Getting in there I definitely recommend you guys come along, and if you like, we can start doing them for the episodes that we chat about here. I don't think that service is going to be up for very long. It doesn't seem...
How does it work then?
So it doesn't seem strictly legal to me, and I don't get it. But what's happening is when I log into the service, it opens up what appears to be a browser in a remote access point. And then you log into your Hulu account or your Netflix account or what have you. And then everyone else comes in and they're all watching the desktop share of my Hulu account.
Oh.
Yeah. So, like I said, we may want to enjoy it while we have access to it. Yeah, we're not... That's none of those are coming anywhere near the channel. Although I was thinking we might do use that for the Bad Decisions live streams, so that everyone can stay in sync with us. All right, so the tech is, of course, a little kludgy. I'm going to actually share my desktop with you and then put this microphone next to the computer speaker. So if you could mute yourself, I would appreciate it. Otherwise, we're going to get some reverb. Here we go. And I forget how to do it every time. There we go. Share. present to everyone, of course. And why you no sound? There we go.
Wow. One thing I've been remiss in not mentioning so far is us, the Buffy fandom itself. And there are two things the show does very well that are relevant in this two-part episode. Divide the fandom, and then crush its soul equally. Significant moments are spread throughout all 7 seasons that we, the fandom, are still arguing about going on 12 years and counting. You can see some of that represented here in the guide's comments. Certainly one of the biggest lightning rods for controversy is Season 2 Xander. I say specifically Season 2 Xander because once certain departures occur in Season 3, he seems to mellow out a bit, though not completely. As a fan myself, I obviously have my own opinions about these controversial moments, and you've been subjected to them for months now. But just because I have a deep, manorific voice and far too much time on my hands doesn't mean that my personal opinion is any more relevant than yours. If you disagree with me, I invite you to keep giving it to me in the comments. That said, Becoming Part 2 features one of the most fandom bifurcating moments in the series. I'm going to attempt to not spend too much time on it because it is just a single brushstroke in a much more significant composition. The conclusion to Season 2. While Season 2 is at times wildly inconsistent, it is certainly one of the most emotionally engrossing in the entire series, and in Becoming, everything comes together. Sometime in the past, young Liam is being tossed from a bar in Ireland. He meets a good-looking woman in an alley who looks an awful lot like the drawing from the pages of the Watcher Diary Buffy and Willow stole in Halloween. It's Darla. Darla offers to show Angel the world. He closes his eyes and... It's our first glimpse of Angel's origin. I've read plenty of hate over David Boreanaz's Irish accent. I don't really have much to say about it other than it's not Kendra bad.
Cheek fights.
It sounds like the accent of someone who has spent a few hours listening to recordings of Colin Farrell.
You and your dirty mind.
Got something down and is now kind of lapsing in and out of it as he tries to remember his lines and blocking. The funny part is, most of the episodes that require Boreanaz to do it, and there are a few, including Angel, are so well written that I rapidly just kind of shrug it off and get caught up in the story. In present day, as school finals are approaching, Giles is brought in to consult on an ancient relic recently dug up. The rest of the gang is sitting around the lunch table watching Xander's fish stick reenactment. Ew. In true Whedon form, this is one of my favorite scenes in the episode, and it's just a bunch of people sitting around a table talking. In flashback, we see Angelus meeting Drusilla. Drusilla discloses her abilities, leading to Angelus's initial interest. Drusilla has a vision of something terrible coming. Willow is teaching Buffy when Buffy's pencil slips off the desk into an unseen crevice on the floor. She digs around and finds the yellow disc with Angel's soul restoration spell on it that dropped in Passion. Our flashbacks catch up to Angel's soul being restored for the murder of a gypsy daughter. Buffy and Willow share Jenny's found curse with the rest of the gang. Xander is nonplussed, and Giles isn't sure he has the ability to invoke the spell. Willow says she thinks she may be able to do it. Pay particular attention to the phrasing Giles uses.
Channeling such potent magic through yourself, it could open a door that you may not be able to close.
It isn't simply that Willow executes a card trick and is done with it. Casting magic involves channeling the magic through the caster, and Giles's phrasing seems to indicate that once the caster has done so, the spell cast is with them forever, as in a door unable to be closed. Because of that, then, the nature of the magic cast is incredibly significant. In this pair of episodes, what I have portrayed as Xander's irrational hatred of Angel, as well as his total unwillingness to distinguish between a being with a soul and without, comes to a head. Xander simply wants Angel dead, and perhaps that is justice of a sort. His method for making his point in this scene is brutal and ugly, even to Giles.
Yeah, well, Jenny's dead.
Can you hear what I'm saying?
I want to note and acknowledge, though, that Xander believes he is behaving rightly. While I think his bitterness and spite towards Angel develop for selfish reasons and colors his interpretations in ways he doesn't account for, that does not mean that I think he is acting deliberately towards Angel's end, simply so that he can have Buffy all to himself. Xander is a, let's say, good soul, for lack of a better term. He isn't malicious. He's a character that genuinely wants to do good, but his lack of self-examination means his judgment is clouded, and his judgment guides his actions. This becomes even more important in the next episode. But the most frustrating thing about this scene is that no one articulates to him the specifics of what he isn't considering. They all speak in generalities.
I'm perspective guy. Angel's a killer.
Xander, it's not that simple.
As I have all season, I find this drama to be incredibly frustrating to watch because it feels so categorically incorrect to me. Angel was very unambiguously a good guy and was proven so to Xander on more than a few occasions. He helped save Buffy and Prophecy Girl. He helped storm the frat house and Reptile Boy. He saved Jenny from being turned into lime pudding in the Dark Age. And those are just the heroic acts that Xander was witness to. And these are the actions Angel took after he had already gallivanted around Europe eating people with Spike, Drusilla, and Darla. Nor does anyone bring up the fact that Xander once turned evil, helped tear a pig to pieces, and very nearly was part of consuming school principal. Were he not already distracted by trying to rape Buffy? While out hunting, Buffy is surprised by Kendra, who is back in town because of an evil portent. To that end, Angelus and company bring home the ancient relic from earlier in the episode.
It's a big rock. Can't wait to tell my friends. I don't have a rock this big.
Angelus explains the history of Akafla the demon, who opened his mouth with the intent of swallowing the world, but was turned to stone before he could. Angelus attempts to free Akafla and fails.
Someone wasn't worthy.
Our flashbacks return to an ensouled Angel hunting city streets for a rat to eat. He's found by an apparently Brooklyn demon named Whistler. Whistler introduces a particularly important notion to the Buffyverse lore.
A demon. Technically, I mean, I'm not a bad guy.
Whistler takes Angel to LA to see a young Buffy for the first time. On the surface, she is dramatically similar to Cordelia, and there's a visual acknowledgement of the unspoken icky side of Buffy and Angel's relationship. He witnesses her first kill, she missed the heart, as well as the disintegrating fragments of her parents' marriage. Angel agrees to help Buffy. Interestingly, Whistler never states clearly whose side he's on or who sent him. Given he's a demon, and a good one, perhaps they are some sort of powers that be. Angelus sends a combustogram to Buffy to get her to come to the graveyard for a fight. Buffy agrees to keep Angel busy for as long as possible while Willow executes the curse. Kendra gives Buffy her favorite steak.
I call it Mr. Pointy.
Buffy fights Angelus, who sends his minions to attack the gang. Xander's arm is broken, Willow is knocked unconscious, and Kendra is killed by Drew. The remaining vamps abscond with Giles, and Buffy arrives on the scene just in time to get caught by the police. The score and sound design in this episode stand out to me as some of the most cinematic in the series to this point.
Soon it'll scream.
There is so much to love about this episode. David Boreanaz's performance feels particularly joyful as he revels in Angelus's depravity.
And you fall for it every single time.
And darkens into Angel's depression. Accent aside, it's a wonderful performance. By the way, in that scene, he's referring to when Buffy got baited away so her friends could be ambushed. There's something particularly disconcerting about Angelus's using Angel's memories against her. This is the first time we see Drusilla and her ambiguous powers truly in action. She's like the Spock of vampires. It wouldn't make sense for her character to indulge in an orgy of kung fu violence. Drusilla is more like a viper. I love the way Whedon shoots the scene too, like a predator stalking its prey, as Buffy runs back to the school in slow motion. It's particularly nightmarish, that feeling of, is she going to make it in time? Of course, without the events of the coming episode, it's difficult to comment too much on this one thematically. As nearly any Whedon written and directed episode, it has a crackling good pace. The dialogue is crisp, and the few bits and pieces of drama are all exciting and fun to watch. As much as I criticize, I love Xander's passion. It's something I think the other characters often lack, and the way he ignites that fire in the library is captivating to watch, even if it is in the damn it Xander kind of way. One more to go.
Some people can get their kicks watching couple and late night flicks. All the movies you'll watch for free now, dramas, westerns, comedies, wow! Video Spot has the best selection. If you like porno, we're your connection.
All right. That's a bit of a deep cut. Hold on one sec. Let me get back to the meeting. And I forget how. I miss you guys. There you are. Stop screen sharing. I had forgotten about that stinger. Okay, so becoming part one. How'd we all do? What do we think? Who wants to start? Let me get my notes up. I'm just gonna pick then. Nathan, you go.
Yeah, it's one of those episodes that's kind of hard to be objective about at all, to watch it without the fan glare.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times. It's just one of those episodes that I just sort of love watching. Just all of the dialogue just pops.
There is something about Whedon episodes. It's actually just a bizarre phenomenon in the show how much better his episodes tend to be than anyone else's. I mean, they're so good. And even this one, which is sort of ostensibly a plot episode, most of the pain is in the next part. It's still just so captivating.
All the fun stuff with like Angel's backstory and just seeing that for the first time.
Another strange phenomenon of the show. If there's a flashback, it tends to be one of the best episodes that season. If there's an Angel timeline flashback, and I even think that's true of some Nambulist with Hawkpire from season 1, the Jeremy Renner flashback episode. I mean, talk about bad accents, but anyway, that's neither here nor there. Charlie, tell me about Becoming Part 1. Did you do the rewatch? Did you?
Yes, I did the rewatch. I had a couple. It's weird because, like Nathan was saying, it's such an amazing episode. It's hard to kind of like to even think objectively about it. I did have like a couple of notes. I think one of the main things is that I find, especially when I watch it today, kind of jarring the ending with the police, when the police immediately point a gun at her and suspect her. And I was thinking, well, that would make much more sense in the reboot when Buffy is going to be African American than when she's white, I think.
Well,
I find it quite jarring. I don't know. She doesn't have. I know that the police, police of Sunnydale are deeply stupid, and they've already kind of suspected her before of thing. But I don't know. It looks jarring when they start immediately pointing the gun at her. I'm like, they wouldn't. She's a white blonde girl with no weapon in her hands.
The way the direction I would have gone with it is she's awfully small to have beaten and slashed the throats of everyone in the library. I mean, I kind of understand, I guess, just sort of wanting to get control of the situation as quickly as possible. But given the state of the room, it does seem like a strange, and the nature of the violence, it seems like a strange assumption.
Yeah, I'm saying, and I don't think it would be strange if, in an American context, if she were black. I just think, I think this little white blonde girl, I don't think they would have pointed a gun straight at her.
Amy, did you do the rewatch?
I did.
How'd it go?
I find that I get really nitpicky now.
Oh, really?
Wait a minute. And I think it's just from having seen it so many times. So I'm trying to put that aside and just kind of remember what it was like when I first watched it.
Well, it has a very contentious Xander scene, and I know that's a difficulty for you.
I don't think. What's so funny is you pull them all out in the videos, so I don't think we need to go. I mean, it's kind of beating a dead horse at this point.
Well, the thing about that scene, though, I mean, it's one of the, as an example, the Dead Man's Party in season 2, I find a bit agonizing. The Xander stuff in front of all of her friends and chastising her and talking down to her, I find kind of just difficult to watch. But there's something about the scene in the library that is very different. I mean, it's electric, is how I feel about that scene. Specifically when he sets off Giles. Dead Man's Party in season 3. Thank you, Boris. Once he says to Giles, "Yeah, well, Jenny's dead," and Giles explodes. It's one of the few moments of anger from Giles's character in the series, I think. Right?
Yeah.
Passion when he attacks Angelus is sort of a contained fury. This was just just focusing on Xander. I find it very hard to look away from. But what specific when you say nitpicks, what specifically has started to come up for you?
Well, I can't really remember from the part 1, but in part 2 at the end when they're saying like it takes Angel's blood to awaken a Cathla and his blood to shut it down. It's like, well, why couldn't she have just cut his hand and stuck his hand on the thing? That story wouldn't have been as dramatic, but that's kind of where my brain gets going after you've seen it so many times. One thing that I did notice that I had never noticed before, because I had watched part 1 a couple weeks ago, and then I watched part 2 today. And then I had time, so I went back and rewatched part 1, and it was interesting, all the foreshadowing they did in part 1. And the bookends with when Darla turns him into a vampire, she's like, "Close your eyes," and then at the end, Buffy and it's "Close your eyes." And I mean, I don't know how many times I've watched these, and I'd never picked up on that.
Yeah, the symmetry there is one. I love symmetry like that, and echoes like that.
Yeah, in episodes like that, I don't want to get too caught up in the details. I just want to like go on the emotional roller coaster ride.
Yeah, and there probably would have been a simple fix if what's his name, Whistler, had just said the person who releases a Cathla has to die to send him back or something like that. I get it.
I love the thought of like Buffy waking up the next day though and realizing she could have just cut his hand or something.
That would have made it so much worse.
Amanda, did you get a chance to rewatch? What are your feelings about the episode?
Yeah, I rewatched like 2 weeks ago, so I didn't redo it recently. But I had the experience of I've been trying to get my husband into Buffy, and it's been slow. And I'm sort of picking out the episodes that I'm showing to him. Actually, your YouTube channel has been really useful in like remembering which episode you really should see.
Don't show him the fish.
Yeah. Definitely skip that. But yeah, so I mean, it was almost hard to enjoy it in the same way because I was doing that annoying thing where I'm like sitting on the edge of the couch, like looking at him every time there's a line I love.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny whenever you watch with someone else, you know, you realize how like certain things might feel dated, or it just doesn't. The emotional beats don't get you quite as hard as they did. But certainly in Becoming Part 2, which I know we'll get to.
Your favorite things are never as unfunny and boring as when you're watching them with someone for the first time when you so want them to love it.
And he doesn't like Priscilla, and it just breaks my heart.
Well, yeah, I struggled. I've grown to appreciate Drew, but initially the first time through, I didn't find her particularly compelling either. I don't know if that's a guy thing or what. By the way, I just wanted to I bag on Go Fish quite a bit. There was a comment that came in yesterday, and I'll spare the person their name. I am disappointed that you have dismissed what I consider to be a seminal, see what I did there, episode for Buffy. After all of her heartache and trauma around sex, it's so good and important to see her in a relationship where she is finally safe to explore her sexuality. I used to overlook Riley in my... by the way, this is a comment on Where the Wild Things Are. I used to and I like her perspective.
I thought you were referencing Go Fish for a second.
I used to overlook Riley in my early years watching the show, but in my 30s, I deeply appreciate him. A man she can go out in the day with, fight side by side with, grow old with, theoretically at least, trust and feel this sexually intense with. This is what we women call the total package, all capital letters. And no, he does not. Riley is her only truly healthy and normal relationship that we witness. That's debatable, but and no, he does not have the drama of Angel or the charisma of Spike. But he is sweet, strong, and vulnerable. Respects her and shows great growth in the short time we know him. And he is the only man that is actually available and fully present in the relationship with her. P.S. I might have to make a video in defense of Riley, keeping in mind that I am firmly on team someone else I won't spoil. I abbreviated a little bit there, but I always feel bad when I've gotten that comment in some variety on Go Fish and on the Puppet Show and a number of other episodes that I pan, and I generally kind of react. People who get something out of the episodes I don't are better off than I am. I can't really see in this episode what you described, but I wish I could. And the Riley shenanigans have a purpose. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but just harping on Go Fish several times from the beginning reminded me of that. I just wanted to share that. And I love when people who do love an episode share that the way they feel about it and the way they see the episode. So, Nicholas?
Yeah, Becoming Part 1 is an interesting one, I think, because it's kind of very much putting all the pieces in place, kind of, let's just have a finale. But it's kind of done very well. So, like, I don't know, it's just the writing really supports it for me. So, I don't know, I feel the coupler does kind of come out of nowhere. It's just like, here is a box with...
Time for a finale.
Yeah. But also, I just enjoy every scene. I really enjoy Giles being brought in as an expert. Like, I don't know, I just really like that.
Yeah, a little more of that. I like any visions of Giles's life outside of the school is always fun and compelling.
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say much about it because it's just really fun.
Yeah, now you guys are understanding of the struggle of writing the scripts. Originally, I used to do two-parters as one long video, and people, there was always a round of comments asking me not to do that. So the first parter is typically, here's the summary, and here's some things I like. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Let me see if I can remember. Sarah. Did you do the rewatch?
I did. And they got all the fashion history right on the flashbacks, which is completely the way to my heart.
For those who don't know, Sarah is a costume, not designer, but costume. Is that the right word? Costume designer?
Someday, maybe. I work in a costume shop and
nice.
like in a theater where we keep all the costumes and rent them, and sort of I've assisted on some shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So period authentic. That's good to know.
Yeah, and that's hard to do. Get everything like properly right. I mean, okay, everybody's super high fashion and apparently very rich, and somehow Darla must have like minion ladies' maids or something, because getting into those stays in that pannier is not a one-person job.
Yeah, you got to
That's
wonder
a lot of whalebone.
A bit weird with her. I thought she was supposed to be somewhat of a well-off family, but she has like a Cockney accent. Like I wasn't sure if she was supposed to be from, because she dresses well and it looked like all her sisters would dress well, but she has a Cockney accent. I wasn't.
And somehow there's a mine in London. That is very odd.
Oh, okay.
I didn't catch that. Yeah, I didn't catch that. Huh. The connection that always pops up for me, which they've never really confirmed one way or another, is when Buffy and Willow steal the Watcher diaries in Halloween to read about Angel's history. They open up the book of the Watcher diaries, and there's a drawing of a woman who looks exactly like Drusilla from this episode in the book. The drawing is named Sarah, I think, but I always wonder if that is what led to Darla's look in that episode, and if that connection was deliberate.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. Well, as we've all stated, it's a little difficult to talk about just a part one. So here, let's watch the part two. I also wish that I had mentioned that costume connection.
One thing I've been
Hold on, queuing up the next one. Man, does this channel have to have advertisements turned on? All right. So once again, if you could mute yourself, I'm going to go into desktop share, and we'll watch part two.
This episode is really going to be a problem for me to talk about. The episodes that have been the simplest and most entertaining to review are the bad ones. But being pretty new to this process, when I deeply love an episode as I do Becoming Part 2, easily in my top 5 for the series, I end up sounding effusive or redundant. Oh, this scene's great. Oh, this scene is great. Oh my god, her performance in this scene is so great. Becoming Part 2 is a Whedon episode, and it is a masterpiece front to back. The show has become comfortable enough that it can play with its own rules and structure, and the results are so much fun to watch. And then they're soul destroying. Let's get into this one. It's great. Damn it! Occasionally, Buffy's powers seem to lapse for the convenience of the story, as in a cop being able to shove an impassioned Buffy towards the door. Snyder shows up and tells the cops Buffy is behind whatever happened.
Stupid little troll, you have no idea.
She breaks free, escapes, shows up in the hospital in an outfit utterly conspicuous for how hard it is trying to be inconspicuous. Xander finds her and brings her to a comaed Willow. There's a nice little exchange here between Xander and Cordelia. It's the most genuine affection I can remember them sharing. And Cordelia labeling herself cowardly and seeming to care about it is another subtle but significant highlight of her true character. Giles is with Angelus at the mansion. Angelus' threat to torture Giles is so depraved and perverse. His mannerisms and intimate disclosure of his terrible desires almost make him sound horny at the opportunity to inflict pain. I love it. It's a tense and frightening performance that's hard to look away from. I'm not sure where this Angelus has been the whole season, but he's working at another level of evil with Joss Whedon feeding him lines. Buffy's mom is being interviewed by the cops from Ted, who were there when Buffy knocked over John Ritter. Buffy goes to see Giles and stumbles on Whistler.
It wasn't supposed to go down like this. Nobody saw you coming.
Wait, what? Because in the last episode, you were just pushing Angel to go see Buffy.
Then you two made with the smoochies. Now he's a creep again.
Okay, so implying that you knew about the curse and didn't expect a broody lone vampire who's been hard up for 70 years not to get with an underage... Oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. Perhaps this scene is the closest the writers come to acknowledging the slightly statutory side of Angel and Buffy's relationship. That and the parallels between James's relationship with his teacher in I Only Have Eyes for You. So, if he was sent down, isn't he technically an angel then? Other than using it as the name of one of the most significant characters, Buffy always seems to shy away from being too biblical with how its universe works. This is one of the rare times it feels a bit awkwardly handled to me. I can think of one more off the top of my head. Buffy storms off and runs into another cop.
Hello, cutie.
This is the Spike. This is the game-changingly hilarious, feels good to be bad Spike we all love. And really, this is the first glimpse of the Spike we'll see the rest of the series. He isn't brooding about some scheme or how he's going to end the Slayer. He proposes to Buffy a deal. He'll help her kill Angel so he can get his girlfriend back.
I want to save the world. We like to talk big. Vampires do. I'm going to destroy the world. It's just tough guy talk.
Well, except for certain vampires, then. As I mentioned in Innocence, I think that Spike's words here highlight a discrepancy between vampire personalities that lacks a clear explanation. Assuming equal evilness for the demons that take over a sired, what then explains the dramatic difference between, say, the hedonist and the psychopathic sadist? My thoughts on that are in the Innocence review.
All right. Talk.
I'm just going to kill this guy.
Oh man, this is the show I love. At Willow's bedside, Xander seems to have a moment of realization when it comes to Willow.
I love you.
Xander's confession brings Willow back and she calls for Oz to come to her side. Joyce finds Buffy and Spike wandering the neighborhood.
Buffy, terrible things have happened. What were you doing?
What, your mom doesn't know?
This episode just feels like Wheaton is getting to play, and it's one of the things that makes the series so special. In another show, this moment would only ever occur as fan fiction. But in Buffy, now that the rules of the universe have been so firmly established, the creator of the series figures, what if we take one of the big bads and have him sit in the living room with Buffy's mom, making awkward conversation about how she once hit him in the head with an axe? Sure, why not? And all of that occurs against the backdrop of a sickening torture sequence where Buffy's father figure is being tortured by her ex-boyfriend. None of this should work, and yet it is a virtuoso performance.
I'm a vampire slayer.
Remember, too, the mirror theme I mentioned in School Hard? Buffy and Spike's fates have roughly coincided this entire season. In What's My Line, Spike is badly injured and loses Drusilla to Angelus. Shortly after, Buffy loses Angel to Angelus as well. As Spike is stuck in a wheelchair, Buffy is unable to do what is necessary to destroy Angelus. As Buffy goes through the process of preparing to do what must be done, Spike begins to heal. And now here they are, allied at the end of the season and ready for the final battle. Buffy tells everyone the plan is to hit the mansion at daybreak. Until Spike of Giles dies, Drusilla dies as well. Joyce gets all Joycey about this newfound information.
I mean, have you tried not being a slayer?
And Buffy reveals a similar darker side about Slayer life that kind of reminded me a bit of her plea in Prophecy Girl.
I would love to be upstairs watching TV or gossiping about boys or, God, even studying. But I have to save the world. Again.
It's a powerful monologue, and remember too that the Slayer role is the show's metaphor for adulthood. Everything Buffy just said could relate similarly to just becoming an adult. The loss of childhood innocence and the burden of responsibility is in its own way tragic.
No, this is insane. Buffy, you need help.
I'm not crazy.
I love the small reference to Joyce wanting to qualify this as insanity, and how she might have handled this information in the past. Joyce tells Buffy, don't come back, perhaps just a tactic she thought would prevent her from leaving rather than an actual ultimatum, but still a demonstration of the Joyce MacGuffin in its total lack of empathy. Angel is still torturing Giles, but Giles refuses to break and even taunts him. Spike talks Angel out of using a chainsaw and calls Drusilla over. The universe building continues as Buffy is confronted by Snyder in the library, who expels her.
No, I didn't do it. The police will figure it out.
In case you haven't noticed, the police of Sunnydale are deeply stupid.
Giles sits, emotionally depleted, barred behind the door of some safe place in his mind to prevent him from succumbing to the pain or revealing anything to Angel. Drusilla searches the corridors for a way in and finds... Ordinarily so stoic, we can see Giles' grief in the form of weight lifted as he sees Jenny. He tells Jenny everything. Whistler tells Buffy that if the gate to hell opens, the only thing that can close it again is Angel's blood.
I can deal. I got nothing left to lose.
Wrong kid. You got one more thing.
Xander finds Buffy and Buffy tells him to get Giles and get out.
Willow, she told me to tell you.
Tell me what?
Kick his ass.
This is The Lie, a source of much contention. I spent some time Googling around fan sites and reading various takes from people on the scene, and it's shocking how much the scene is still being debated. You can probably conclude my reaction to The Lie already, so I'm not going to dwell on it. Simply, Willow has made her own decision that she wants to try the spell again. She has asked Xander to tell Buffy. Buffy trusts Xander and always expects the truth from him, especially given information that might affect her tactics in battle. And Xander decides that he knows better than either of them. Nobody knew how the battle would play out, and Xander's decision actually limited Buffy's options. Whatever his motivations for that decision, that is very simply wrong. He cannot elect himself commander. Buffy attacks, Xander gets Giles out, Spike chokes out Drusilla, another odd contradiction to the no breath, no heartbeat part of vampires. Angel pulls the sword free of Akatha, he and Buffy duel. As Willow chants the words of the curse, we see the spell suddenly begin to flow through her.
This is a good thing.
Speak English.
The door is now open.
No hope. Take all that away, and what's left?
Me.
Buffy battles Angelus back to Akatha. She disarms him, knocks him to the ground, and then... This is the moment the entire season has led to. Buffy has been torn all season between her consuming relationship with Angel and her path to adulthood as the Slayer.
A little responsibility is all I ask.
But as the Slayer, you don't have the luxury of being a slave to your passions.
I don't think the show is saying that we can't have love and be adults. Rather, that adult love doesn't require us to be someone other than who we are. Adult love allows us to maintain our authenticity and integrity. Our choices define us. And when we act as though we don't have any, our lives become meaningless.
Angel and I look into the future. All I see is you.
In Halloween, each character was consumed by a specific trait, but Giles retained his ability to choose, and it was he who saved the day. In Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered, Xander cast a love spell that removed the freedom of choice from every woman in Sunnydale.
I know it's not love. It's obsession. Selfish, banal obsession.
Consider Whistler's warning in Giles' apartment when Buffy said she had nothing more to lose.
Wrong kid. Got one more thing.
Certainly could have meant her life, but I think the statement foreshadows the final goodbye between Angel and Buffy when she is faced with an impossible choice, to be the Slayer or lose herself completely. He is imploring her to act authentically, as her true self, as Buffy once implored Ford in Lie to Me.
You have a choice. You don't have a good choice, but you have a choice.
While some of this is the result of Buffy and Angel's actions, much of it is simply an indifferent universe. Buffy didn't make Angel a vampire. She never asked to be the Slayer. She never wanted that responsibility. That is life. Or, to put it another way,
Here's the thing. There's moments in your life that make you, that set the course of who you're going to be. Sometimes they're little, subtle moments. Sometimes they're not. Bottom line is, even if you see them coming, you're not ready for the big moments. No one asked for their life to change. Not really. But it does. So what are we, helpless? Puppets? No. The big moments are gonna come. You can't help that. It's what you do afterwards that counts. That's when you find out who you are.
Just do it!
I don't remember.
Go! What are you waiting for? Do it! Do it! Yesterday, you said tomorrow, so just do it! Just do it!
Feeling genuinely upset.
Okay. I may be the only one who likes that. But I don't care. That's part of this process. Screen sharing, stop screen sharing. Yeah, that was originally the stinger for the Becoming Part 2 video, but I found it kind of ruined the mood. So yeah, decided to leave that off. I know some people actually hate that. Is actually one of the most downvoted videos on the channel, which somehow makes it more delightful for me. Okay, so I'm rolling down to my notes here. Nicholas, we now have the complete picture. Tell me about the episode.
So many thoughts. First one, maybe, just maybe, if he hadn't wasted one of his followers sending an overdramatic message in form of a burning vampire, he would have done slightly better in the fight at the end, just to suggest.
Yeah, I was thinking about that this time when I was watching it. The Imola-gram that he sends, for one thing, motivate. Like, Angel's not a cult leader; he's just an asshole. You know, like he doesn't have that. He's not running a cult where he like can get the vampires to go do that. So that struck me as a little interesting in this rewatch.
But isn't he also like he just loves? I don't know if cursing's okay. Effing with his victims.
Oh yeah, we can curse. I just call.
Yeah. I mean, he whatever psychological torture he can inflict on Buffy, he will. And I don't know if that was the best way, maybe, because it's a little dramatic and silly. But I don't think it doesn't fit in with the kind of stuff Angel would do.
Do you think? Sarah, we're getting a little static from your connection. I'm gonna put you on mute. No, not you, Amanda. I'm just getting a little crackle, so I'm gonna put you on mute. If you want to say something, just unmute yourself. Yeah, well, I mean, it's just the suicidal aspect of it. But then again, I suppose if you start using that logic, you'd have to examine what's his name, the glasses one that worked for Spike and Drusilla. Like they abused him so terribly. What is it about being in that gang that was particularly interesting for him? Nicholas, what else did you have?
I also think it's really interesting how Spike gives the whole speech about quite liking the world, really, but also very clearly does not care whether or not it ends, given when there's like the big dramatic fight at the end, will they manage to stop the world ending? He is perfectly happy just to leave Buffy to die.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's a good
so
process.
That was all talk.
This episode specifically, to me, is one of the most successful pieces of entertainment I've ever seen. That that delivers as well on theme as it does on the fiction. I mean, and culminating in that moment where she's standing outside, and Angelus is walking up to her. No friends, no hope. Take all that away, and what's left? Me. The one thing she had left to lose, that Whistler was talking about early on. It's such a cheer moment. But I think also for me, when I was first watching the show, that was one of those moments where I was like, I'm watching something different here. Like, this is not, there's something about this that I want to learn about. And that moment specifically probably helped drive me to go and get Mark's book. Amanda, what we have the full picture now. How do you feel about Becoming Part 2?
Well, so the one part of this episode that really gets me is, so I watched Buffy in my formative years. Like, I watched it while it was live, while it was happening, and I've always been a Spike girl. And I remember in this episode being like, the bad guy and the good guy can work together?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I very much view this episode as like the beginning of all of the amazing surprises that happen down the line with Spike and Buffy. Like, when things eventually start happening in season 6, I mean, I basically screamed every episode. That's mostly what I think about in this episode. I'm like, it's the beginning.
Yeah.
It's starting.
I mean, as soon as that scene between the two of them on the police car is so damn charming.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so newsflash, we're mortal enemies. We don't take timeouts.
Yes.
Like every line is incredible. It's so good.
I think just generally across both two-parters, every single Spike line is gold.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I don't like.
Yeah.
Just
God, he's gonna kill her.
Get the helmet for my daughter.
Oh yeah, you once bludgeoned me with an axe. Yeah, and this is the episode. Joyce learns one thing that people were kind of mad about was that I didn't point out what I thought were sort of self-evident overtones to a child coming out to their parent as gay. And it very, very much to me, I mean, I do a lot. To me, that's a missed opportunity in that video. I do a lot of commentary on things that are self-evident. And so that was an opportunity to sort of, liken that experience to that moment. Because I'm sure that, that's not something that speaks to me, but it does speak to people. And I think that's one of the important aspects of the episode guides and the script. So, Nathan.
Yes. I did bad as I only managed to rewatch part 1 that I finished about 5 minutes before this. So I'm just going off of my internal things of how much I love part 2. But...
There was a gentleman in the chat that seemed a little miffed with me. Frank, I apologize. Frank said, okay, I'm off close to 2 a.m. here. So glad the show started an hour later for a guy who didn't show up. Sorry, buddy. But, and I wanted to acknowledge there was a $10 donation in the chat from Moody Bookworm. Moody, I like your name. And cheers. Thank you so much. This is coffee and other stuff. It is Saturday.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that I think the channel desperately needs is a website for the purposes of having a calendar so that we can put these events in a place where people can, now that we're doing the episode rewatches on Rabbit, I know there are some people who take these times very seriously, and when I'm late, get kind of upset with me. So one of the goals is to, now that I feel like Monday's video is mostly edited, and then I'm going to start on the scripts for the next 2 videos this weekend. So now that I feel like after an awful November, there's kind of a rhythm developing, a calendar seems like a much more doable thing. And when we do that, for this group specifically, we can schedule a Rabbit rewatch where we all watch the 2 episodes together and then hop on and have a conversation about it. If that's something you guys, I mean, I have to rewatch them anyway, so I may as well rewatch them as part of the group.
Yeah, it'd be quite useful because I end up almost always forgetting until the day of the thing, and then suddenly I'm like, I watched the episode.
Yeah. Well, and someone, actually, Sarah, I believe it was you, posted a Nancy Boy hair gel shirt in Discord today. So we're playing with some ideas for. We're getting a lot of static from your mic, Sarah. Sorry about that. Anyway, so that's the goal going forward is Monday is the video day. So Warzone, I missed that by a day with the last one. Warzone will be up. And if not, to let you guys know when the video will release. And then we can start building things like Eternal Sunshine on top of that and kind of go from there. So Nathan, you didn't do the homework. That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
Lauren, welcome. Hi. There.
Here we go. Okay.
I think you're unmuted now. How are you doing? Thanks for joining.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. I wasn't expecting it to be early, and I thought it was usually later because I'm on the East Coast, and I don't know.
Well,
I
I did shift the time, so I apologize for that. Again, we need a calendar for these sorts of things. Did you get a chance to rewatch? And if not, what tell me about Becoming?
Well, I remember watching. I want to say Buffy was well into season 3 when I finally started watching. Like all of my friends were talking about Buffy and Angel and how heartbreaking it was, and I'm like, oh yeah, totally. It was really sad, and I didn't know. And so when I did finally watch it, it's still one of my favorites. It's such a great season finale and so heartbreaking. And I mean, Sarah Michelle Gellar really sold. I mean, just like, you know, after Akatha sucks Angel in and he's gone, and just the way she just breaks. It's like slow and just
Yeah, her face after Close Your Eyes.
Yeah. And
agony. I crack every time at that line.
Yeah, and after I did finally watch that episode, I immediately went to find the album, and I listened to Christoph Beck's Close Your Eyes score endlessly because it was so beautiful and it was so sad.
Yeah. It seems like everyone has their favorite finale, but Becoming Part 2 is always in contention for their favorite finale. Like mine's The Gift, but man, Becoming Part 2 is so close. Jax's Grave.
Grave.
Yeah, and but that gut punch at the end of Becoming Part 2 is stunning.
Yeah, and yeah, I came in just as you were talking about the Joyce and kids coming out to their parents, and I get why it affects people, but I feel like, and I'm trying to tread on how I word this because I'm not part of the LGBT community. I'm an ally, that's it. So I don't know quite what they go through. But I kind of rolled my eyes at the "Have you tried not being a Slayer" line, because to me it's such a huge cliche. I mean, and
well, that is one of the challenges, right? Like one of our prominent commenters in our community has gotten on me for making so much fun of "You're a Girl." That's one of my heavy-handed whipping boys, is going back to that moment of wishing it was more subtle. I mean, that's where theme overwhelms plot, where it's just so on the nose. And I go back and forth, I think, with Joyce's line. I think that it is a trope, or it is a very stereotypical line to hear, and sometimes I feel a little bit of I wish that was a little more whatever. But then again, as this person has kept reminding me about "You're a Girl," you know, it does happen. So it's hard to find that line between successive delivery and theme, I guess.
Was it already a trope at the time? I mean, it must have been, I guess, because they were trying to make that comparison. But as a kid, that just went way over my head.
Yeah, I mean, maybe target age is another. I mean, again, I watched the show when I was 33, 34.
Yeah.
So, yes, Sarah.
The static better now?
Yeah.
I would suggest people who are looking for commentary on that aspect would be better off going to Buffering, the Vampire Slayer, because that's hosted by 2 queer women. So they give, in their episode, they give a lot of thought to that. And I'm sure Lonnie and Noelle will do it when they get to it with Still Pretty.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't cover everything. That's why there are different people. There's, like, an Academy of Buffy.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges for me, too, is before I started doing this, I read and watched a lot about the series, And some of that perspective snuck into my own, because once you hear something that resonates as true, it just becomes truth. It's no longer this what have you. And as a reviewer, that's difficult, because if you don't acknowledge the person who first shared that perspective with you, you know, that's questionable sourcing is the problem there. So one of the things I do is I actually don't consume a lot of other media from other sources. I would love to watch Dusted. I hear wonderful or Buffering, excuse me. I hear wonderful things about what they do, but I just try and isolate my own perspective. But for everyone else, that is a medium to consider. I have lost track of who has not gotten to speak yet, so I apologize. Amanda?
Oh, I feel like I've spoken a lot.
Okay.
I mean, I'll speak more. I just feel like it's trying to give everyone a fair shot. It's not me.
Well, and one of the, I mean, we just sort of fell into this format for these conversations. I don't mean to put people on the spot, and perhaps there's some people who don't come to these because they don't want me to call on them to say something. If that's ever the case, I'm totally cool with it. I can ramble. You guys know I can ramble for a goodly amount of time. Amy, we have the whole picture now.
Yeah, so going back to my nitpicky comment,
Yes.
I think on the last one I had mentioned how Normal Again was one of my favorite episodes, and this is where the story gets complicated. If you think that Normal Again really happened, then Joyce, at this point of time, they would have gone through that time where, didn't they say in Normal Again that Buffy had been in an institution for a little while? So granted, when this episode was written, that hadn't been an idea. So
no, you raised a good point.
Going back to watch that, it's like, wait a minute, that's not what happened.
Yeah, that's an issue with that retcon.
Yeah, but they're, but again, I try to give them some leeway. You know, they have a lot of episodes to write in a year. So the other thing that really stood out to me, and I don't know if it's having these conversations and just looking at the episodes in a different way, but I really was watching people's expressions and how they were reacting to things a little bit more. There's the moment where Drusilla turns into Jenny, and her and Giles are making out, and then they stop, and there's the whole gamut of emotion that Giles has, from being in this like blissful state to coming to the realization of what's happening. Like, oh my God, it was amazing.
It's so captivating. I mean, I've been overusing the word electric, but that scene specifically is so hard to look away from. And his acting, I mean, obviously he's the best actor on the show by a wide margin, and all of it shows up in that scene. What's painful is when she is Drusilla again. They play the scene for a joke, that she gets carried away and is making out with him too much, but then you see the disappointment on his face. And I just break in half again. That moment of, oh, it was not real. I've been working on a top 10 about love. The next top 10 is going to relate to love, and so I've been reading a lot about Jean-Paul Sartre's perspective on love and relationships and choice, and how that filters into how self-determination affects relationships between two people. And one of the anecdotes that I want to start with is about that experience that you have, at least I have had. I've been in love a couple of times, and that I've had that experience where you have a dream that the person comes back to you. And in the dream, you feel this sense of companionship and connection and all the things that were there before the relationship broke into pieces. And then you wake up and remember that you're alone again. And that is encapsulated to me in that scene between Giles and Drew. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah.
Sorry. Soapbox.
Yeah. I believe that's kind of why we're here. Another moment I really liked or was affected by was when Joyce tells Buffy not to come home again. you know, if you walk out that door, don't bother coming home.
Yeah,
And
that
how
gets
Buffy,
me.
she leaves the door open. Like, she doesn't shut the door behind her. I really like that. And I thought Joyce was a total bitch. And, you know, you just don't say that to your child, even in the heat of anger.
Yeah.
It just made me, the whole way she reacted to that. It's just like, yeah, but what Buffy said, it's like, well, what do you think's been going on? It's like she's been in denial and has chosen to not be paying attention.
That scene also hints at something that is I picked up on in Dead Man's Party, which is that it's suggested that Joyce may have a drinking problem. In that scene, she says, "Have another drink," and Joyce throws the drink in the sink. And then in Dead Man's Party, Peppermint Joyce is having schnapps with what's her name in the kitchen?
Pam.
Pam. I love Pam. I love all the annoying, aggravating characters.
So I've always, that's like literally the only thing I can think of that Ian in your videos have ever been like, is I love Joyce. And I often think of, I don't know if you guys are Calvin and Hobbes fans, but the guy who wrote Calvin and Hobbes says, like, I get a lot of flack. People think the parents are mean, think they're uncaring. I think they're doing incredibly well, given the, like, very difficult child they've been dealt.
Oh, they're not bad parents. What?
Yeah, that's what he said, people have said. But sort of when I've been watching the videos, and it's interesting, like, I'd never picked up on that drinking problem thing. So I mean, I'm not saying I am right or you're wrong. I just, like, I've always had this incredible affection for Joyce and just felt like she handled it as, like, how are you going to react if your kid comes and says, I kill monsters? It's like,
and then says she has to go kill one.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think in that scene specifically, she was wielding the last thing she could to try and keep Buffy safe. And the last thing she could was her protection, was the house, was all of that. And it was a panic instinct. And I certainly, my family life was more like that scene over and over and over again. So I certainly relate to her perspective. People get defensive of my treatment of many of the characters on the show, including Xander and what was the Riley. Definitely people think I'm being way too hard on Riley this season.
Oh my gosh, no, because I've been rewatching your season 4 videos and the Riley sex face.
It's
horrifying. My friend Mahler we edited a bit from the live stream edit for that, where we were talking about the five forms of torture. Ian's 5 forms of torture. Number 5, Riley's sex face. It's a very funny video. I'll share it with afterwards. No, but where I was going with that was my ambition is always to be an equal opportunity caller outer. So if any character is first of all, I've never to this point suggested that they should be written differently. So the fact that a character has a fault to me is part of the reason we watch the show. And it's for that reason that all of my critique of Xander, like specifically Prophecy Girl, where I talk about how he reacts to Buffy shooting him down, I attack that as a fan, not as a critic. So my interest in the conversation in that scene was talking about, as a human being, what he did wrong. And the same as in the previous video where Riley says, I'm so in love with you, I can't think straight. No. This is stupid nonsense. Like, you can't justify your ass hattery under the guise of, well, you're just so amazing. But again, I don't think Riley should be written differently. I actually appreciate that a character fouls up in that regard. The challenging point is when there seems to be endorsement of that perspective. And in that scene, we cut to Buffy's face, and she's like,
"Aww,
thanks." She doesn't say "I love you" back. And the romantic music sort of swells up, and so I'm pointing out in that scene that no, I like the way it's written, but sorry, I got off on another long rant there. Riley's sex face needs a bigger name. There was someone I wanted to point out in chat, and it's a little ways back. Sorry, chat. I'm have not been reading comments as much. I need Mr. Jackalis here. Yeah, I missed it. Oh, it was about in the 90s. It was common to hear things. This is from Fallen Princess. In the 90s, it was common to hear things like "you throw like a girl" or "you hit like a girl." So yes, "you're a girl" would have been a thing that was said at the time. I thought that was interesting. Just wanted to highlight that.
I think it pays off. Like you said, I agree that it was kind of heavy-handed, that version, but a much better use of that line was in. I'm pretty sure it was in The Gift in season 5 when she saves the guy in an alley. This is after Dawn's been taken, and she saves the guy. And I think he said something along the lines of, "But you're just a girl."
You're just a girl. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says, "That's what I've been saying." I think in that sense, it pays off a bit more because it's more playing with. It's not just there so that we can be like as fans, go. Oh, but she's not just a girl, and it's sexist. Like that original thing. It was intended. I don't think it was bad, but it was intended to get a very simple, straight reaction on our part of defensiveness and that, whereas the use later on, it's like suddenly it involves such a much more complicated thing, because part of me is thinking, no, she's not just a girl, she's amazing, great, but she's also obviously suffering from it and trying to deal. Anyway, that use of it makes for a more complicated, sort of thoughtful reaction, whereas the original use in season 2 was just so that we'd be like, sexist, defensive, Buffy's awesome.
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah.
It implies a simple reaction.
One was an undeveloped. One thing that Warzone has proven a challenge, because if I thought the feminist commentary was going to bring out the trolls on the internet, getting into ideas of race and class, which Warzone brings up, and I think it's an integral part of Gunn's arc. But one of the things that I think there's a distinction between is a trope, a cliche, and a stereotype, and the difference is primarily development. Like a trope is sort of a helpful starting place for your audience, but then it gets developed into something more interesting. So Cordelia being the alpha bully schoolgirl trope in season 1 was a familiar point of view for us, the audience, when watching, to go, oh, I understand this character and where we're starting from. And then she becomes one of the more complex characters in the Buffyverse by the point we're at in Angel season 1. But when you reach for "you're a girl" and his literal penis, which she breaks in half at the end of the episode, it's a little less interesting, I guess. Is sort of how I felt about that use versus what you're describing, where in the alleyway in The Gift, I love that bit, because when she says, "I've been telling everyone that," what I get from that is that, yeah, and there's no reason for that to be remarkable. Like the power, being a woman and having that sort of power shouldn't be a surprise. You're just a girl. That's what I've been telling everybody. And then she sort of goes back in. That's commentary. And I think that it's very beautiful the way that works in The Gift.
Just a thought. It's also like she's not so much a girl anymore. She's now a woman. She's grown up. Maybe she's ready to. Maybe she's not ready to be grown up. So she's like, I'm just a girl.
Yeah, The Gift is the end of adolescence within the arc, so that makes a lot of sense. Oh, sorry. That was the flaming 90s, not now context. Yeah. Oh, of course. Considering context in all cases, it's like these things are now dated. One of my references in Warzone is Chandler and his transphobia, his transphobic sense of humor, which now thuds like a ton of bricks. But I was 17 years old when Friends was airing. I was in the sweet spot. Everyone at my school had the Monica. And I watched that show and laughed. So, but I think it's important to, or Rachel, excuse me. Yeah. but I still think it's important to comment on these things now. I don't think it reduces the work or rather what's good about the work to comment on those things. Let me just pop into my notes here for a second. I love the fish stick reenactment. The fish stick reenactment in the first episode. And Snyder is. We watched Restless last night, and just seeing him again, it just warms my heart. Are we having a chair shortage?
Yeah. Oh, and I love that because it's also kind of showing that, because I think one of the ambiguities that one of the things that can be misinterpreted season 2 is is sex bad? Is that what they're trying to say?
Yeah.
And by showing that no, this bad character is the one being all rigid and criticism. It's showing that no, that's not the point. It's kind of that's what I kind of got from it, is that no, this is being overly controlling of young sexual lives. What we're saying is much more complicated and to do with how to grow up and how to anyway, that's probably reading too much into it, but I kind of want to interpret it that way.
Well, I wonder how you guys feel about this. So that Where the Wild Things Are comment was lauding Where the Wild Things Are as positive for Buffy's sexual freedom, where she's had so many toxic relationships before, and I think that season 2 can be misread as sex will lead to a death, but that's the horror trope that they're actually commenting on, is how in a horror movie, when the characters have sex, death is imminent, and they subvert it by actually having Angel be the one who dies and becomes Angelus. But the sex is still destructive in that season. In season 3, well, there's just the subtext with Faith. There's not a ton going on with that one. Oz and Willow, to me, are the only healthy portrayal of sex in the show. They have sex at the end of season 3, and it's not commentary. The world doesn't come to an end. No one dies. But Buffy has Parker, and then the problem with Where the Wild Things Are is the sex is powering the horror. The sex is actually the battery that powers the... So I don't think you can read that scene as healthy. And then Spike, the sex with Spike is masochism. She's using him, she's suffering deep depression and lack of feeling and using him to feel anything. So I've always wondered how people... sorry, Amanda, say that again?
Oh, I just said sexy masochism.
Yes. Sexy masochism. But I'm just wondering how you guys feel about the portrayal of sex. I mean, do you feel like the show was unnecessarily negative about sex? I mean, it is a show about in the late 90s, early 2000s about a teenager. So maybe they sort of felt obligated to go that route thematically. But just curious what your guys' thoughts are on that.
I think it's a bit more complex than sex is bad versus sex is good. I think there's a common theme that like everything powerful that comes up in Buffy when it's handled irresponsibly and carelessly tends to go badly, like magic and sex and lots of other things. But when it's like careful and planned out and like I don't know, like Willow and Oz having the good sex, when they've talked about it before in amends and they've like, are being sort of responsible and sensible about it, and it has no bad consequences. But Buffy and Angel just kind of get caught up and don't think. And Xander, Xander gets hurt in consequences because when he thinks that Faith cares about him because they had sex, but there was no, like, she was just kind of like, "Are you up for it?"
Yeah,
no thought ahead, no, like, is this a good idea or anything like that? And yeah.
JM Wild in chat says, "What kind of sex with Oz wouldn't be good sex?" Fair enough. Yeah, I mean there's some people that read. I think this is an overreading, which we can be prone to. But there's some people that have read the sex in the Zeppo as non-consensual, and I think that's a bit of a stretch. Certainly it's casual, but and I think that it's reversing traditional gender stereotypes on purpose in that scene for the sake of commenting on it. But if Faith had been a man and Xander had been a woman in that scene, is it offensive?
I mean, I haven't watched that episode in a little bit, but I don't remember. I mean, no, Xander was surprised.
I'm suddenly very up.
Yeah, like he's the word. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it's a reach, but certainly sex is very consequential in season 2, so I think it's worth considering. And Charlie, I like your take, or I'm sorry, Charlie or Lauren, I like the take that everything powerful comes with a consequence. Is the idea? I think that's great. Another thing I noticed in that first scene in the cafeteria, Cordy is so kind. There's no sarcasm. She's being incredibly sweet. Like she's you have fish hands.
To the Scoobies, when Snyder walked away, she gave that.
You're an impotent Nazi.
I do remember that. You're a tiny impotent Nazi with a bug up your butt the size of an emu.
Yeah, but also in that scene, I sort of go, oh, season 3 and Lover's Walk. Crap. But you don't see that kindness from her again until she's with Angel in season 1, I think. That like somnambulist where she goes out on the balcony with him and talks to him about the powers that be ask for you, and there's a reason, like she becomes Angel always needs an anchor, and when he loses his anchor, when he pushes people away or loses his anchor, he lapses into Angelus behavior, and so she's the new Buffy in season 1 for him, and then sort of less so in season 2. But anyway, that just stuck out to me, like the distinct lack of sarcasm. Almost 60% of that was a compliment. We talked a little bit about the fight in the library. Kendra returns to die. I always found that a little strange. They were probably already planning for Faith by that point, and so but it just seemed a bit unceremonious. The scene between her and Drew is wonderful, but she really plays no other role in the story other than to give Mr. Pointy and then to have her throat cut, which to me always felt like a kind of a loss or a waste.
She gives the sword as well, kind of. She gives the sword that Buffy uses.
Yeah. So she brings the MacGuffin.
Yeah, the MacGuffin.
Yeah, to hand it off. But Nathan, were you going to say something there?
Yeah, I was just going to say because the only other time that we'd seen Kendra was in like What's My Line. And then how well executed Faith is. It's one of those things where I'm like, it would have been great if we would have seen more development with Kendra, but the fact that she went when she did and then we got Faith, it kind of doesn't like. doesn't make me go, because I love what comes after it because of what and everything with her, even though it is just she's there for the plot. Like everything is so well executed, like her death and following her eyes and.
Well, it's wonderfully constructed. That scene, but I just, especially now that I'm writing about ethnicity on the show, the handling of it, I do wonder if Kendra could have been Faith in the had they already had the idea of Faith constructed. So Faith shows up in Sunnydale in What's My Line, rather than Kendra, and then they sort of lead into the next little bit. Obviously, that's not how things turned out. We can fantasize about how we would have constructed the show, but it always struck me as kind of a wasted character.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I wonder if it would have been possible if we had Kendra and Faith, make Kendra more of a setup character, like not have her leave in Once by Line. Like, would it have been possible to fit her in there? I mean, how would she have reacted to Angel losing his soul and becoming Angelus? Because she was, would she have been like, I wanted to kill him when I got here? And
well, and that's the role that Xander takes. His perspective is validated by Angelus's turn. So
I wouldn't say validated.
No, I'm not saying it's properly validated, but he feels validated by the change. Just a thought. It's a big rock. Can't wait to tell my friends. I never know how to feel about Lolita Buffy. The reference is so specific with the lollipop and sort of the bright pink attire. It is commentary, and yet it exists. And yet, Angel, Career Week. How'd you know about Career Week? I lurk. He stalks her over the course of the show, even when they're together. And they're showing the Lolita bit feels like an acknowledgement, and yet it's not actually commentary. You know what I mean when I say that? Like,
they bring attention to it, but don't actually go anywhere. They just sort of go, well, we acknowledge it's a thing, but we're not going to actually.
Unless Angel turning to Angelus is the justice or the sort of comeuppance for that aspect, but then he comes back in season 3 and sort of the romance reignites.
Yeah. Well, I'd say it pays off, by the time we get to season 7 and she's, the whole cookie dough reference. It's, it pays off about that fact that she's, that she's still developing, that she's still a child, that she's not quite an adult yet. It does feel a bit, and I think, it does feel when he comes back in season 3 and they start things, but then again, it ends up bad. The whole point is it doesn't work in season 3.
It's just
that it's a bit too, it's a bit too icky. It's like we need the reference to this not being right without it being too bad, because then you just can't.
I want to by the way, I want to highlight Joshua Gooden's comment in chat. He says it's difficult because the question might not be whether or not Xander consented, but whether he had the freedom not to in that scene.
I think he felt threatened. The only reason he would have.
I didn't read threat in that scene either, but in terms of the question, that is a salient aspect of it. Sorry about that. No, I'm keeping you guys. Let me just. The ick factor. Good Lord. Buffy misses the heart. I always think that's a wonderful detail. Weird line. She must be prettier than the last Slayer.
Weird line.
So Angel says he wants to help her, and Whistler says she must be prettier than the last Slayer, which ew, I guess.
Yeah.
What do we make of that?
Well, I always wonder, I mean, Whedon created the show because he loved the idea of what if the blonde girl, innocent in the alley, could fight back? But at the same time, he must have known the show he was creating, which was generally for teenage girls. And I mean, we have all these examples of like Twilight and I don't know what else, where, yeah, as young girls, I fantasized about a mature, worldly older man like sweeping me off my feet. And so I feel like the show knew who it was targeted as originally.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and did what they could with that, but then maybe some of the like nods to Lolita are like, we're smarter than this.
Yeah, I guess my the thought that comes to mind is the crime is one way. You know, so I get the fantasy aspect of it certainly, but yeah, just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I do love Whistler's line, the more you live in this world, the more apart from it you discover you really are. Someone wasn't worthy.
Why didn't we get more Whistler though? Why didn't Whistler ever come back?
Well, Whistler was supposed to be Doyle. Yeah. Whedon's ambition was that he would be Doyle on Angel, and if he had been, and Glenn Quinn, so they wouldn't have had Glenn Quinn's unfortunate struggles that he came with. The entire direction of Angel would have been something completely different. No Wesley, presumably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I agree with that.
No, and no Cordelia with visions either.
Right.
Like, yeah. No, yeah. I can't imagine.
It is curious. We're mortal enemies. We don't get timeouts. At this point, I'm just writing down awesome lines.
The whole in the band thing. I'm in a band with Spike.
I especially love Spike claiming that Buffy just plays the triangle. Yeah. Like punk Spike, triangle in the band.
Yeah, and then, well, I sing, and he actually does sing. The evolution, or the Whedon discovering that once more with feeling was possible is kind of lovely. Like we just watched Restless, and I think I've heard that it was that having Giles sing the exposition song on stage that led to him going, man, I've got a lot of talented musicians in this cast. Why don't we do a musical? The Xander holding Willow's hand saying he loves her scene is the callback to the way the season opened, which they didn't touch very often. So in the opening of the season, they're bored walking through Sunnydale, and there's a moment where they're about to kiss with the ice cream cone, and then they don't. And they sort of talk about it with Willow's crush, but it seems like that moment is the precursor to their affair in season 3. Unless I'm misreading that. He said, like him, because there's a pause where he sort of realizes, I love you. And that then goes from there.
But is it romantic love?
Well,
I feel like it's not just like a kind of friendship when saying I love you. I think it's more than that. But I'm not sure if it's not. I think it wasn't meant as an entirely romantic statement.
Well, yeah, because I think there's that scene in a vacuum, and then there's the context of the opener to season 2, and then sort of where things go in season 3. So
his look of disappointment when she starts.
When she asks for Oz.
When she asks for Oz.
Yeah. It's an interesting scene. I found it kind of gross. And I don't know why. The first time I watched it, I was like, dude, she's with someone and he's awesome. Stop stroking her hand.
Or she was with somebody else, and it
typical Xander.
Yeah, my feelings on Xander are very clear, and I've tried to look at it in different ways, and it's like I just keep coming back to where were these feelings for Willow before she met Oz, and I don't know. I
And learn to appreciate what you have. I mean, Cordelia might be snarky and have her own faults, but she is way out of his league.
Yeah, yeah, way out of his league. Well, anyway, that scene always just stood out to me. Xander, I love you. Mom finds out. Buffy's little speech about, do you know how lonely this is? And the washing the blood out makes me cry.
I would love to be upstairs in my room gossiping about boys, even studying.
Yeah, so lovely. And I think that's one that grew on me too. Like the first couple of times I watched the show, I don't think that scene landed for me in quite the same way. But the idea of the Slayer being the one, it was probably the context of season 7 and Conversations with Dead People that really recontextualized that scene for me, where she is talking about the loneliness of being the Slayer, the separation, the anxiety, all of that. But
I might be boring people with costume details, but did anybody else notice that Spike and Joyce are dressed like echoes of each other, which sort of makes Buffy even more on her own?
I didn't.
That's awesome.
Every time you make me want to go rewatch it.
And also, the scene with the meat, right? She's wearing a black shirt, and there's the whole like black and white thing all season. And the way the light hits it at that moment, it turns gray. Like it's a moment of integration.
Wait, which moment is that? You said
the what do you have left? And
that's. I was like, what do you mean by clapping?
Me.
Yeah. The light. It's like a cool combination of lighting and costume that it's like suddenly she's gray.
That's awesome.
Huh.
Did the overalls have any meaning in the last scene? I just
Buffy's overalls of sadness.
Yeah, I was like, I would never picture her even owning that outfit.
You haven't heard?
Man, in Sanctuary, I should have rather than get her a big pillowy sweater. It was the line. I should have said, get her a big pair of overalls and some ice cream.
She always when she's in Ted, she's in the huge overalls, and then it makes her look like she's about 5. And it's the overalls of sadness. I think it's the color of childhood in this.
It definitely seems like they are her escape. It's her escape outfit. I don't want to be me outfit.
Yeah.
In order to be worthy, you must perform the ritual in a tutu, Pillock. I mean, I don't know what's hotter, him singing or him saying that line to Angelus in that scene. So good and captivating. The other thing was Angelus has a very imprecise performance, right? So there's Buffy season 2 Angelus, there's Angelus in Eternity, where he's on ecstasy, man. And then there's Angelus from Angel season 4, I want to say, where he's both Hannibal Lecter and the Joker. And then there's Orpheus. Definitely my favorite Angelus, but I really want to torture you. I think there's a way to sort of fan figure out why Angelus is so different every time. And to me, that's sort of every time he comes back, he is the sum total of Angel's recent experiences. Mm-hmm. And so the Angel in season 4 has had 3 new years of accumulation that influence and alter Angelus's personality. But the one in this one is certainly my favorite. He becomes sort of the Joker. It's Hannibal and the Joker in Angel, but this one is a little more creepy and elegant and gross. I don't know, but that's definitely something that every time you see Angelus, that jumps out at me. His insults for Spike in the wheelchair certainly run contrary to Wesley talking about Angelus's brilliance in Angel season 4. stay out of it, sit and spin.
It does roll off the tongue, though. That particular one.
Just
the contempt with which he delivers it.
I mean, just calling him Wheels, like, come on. Just me, and I know I'm nitpicking, but Spike beating the hell out of Angel with the poker, I kept hearing in my head, baby, a lot more like a supper, baby, like a supper. Yeah, Resold Angel is, and I think Boreanaz did a wonderful job with Resold Angel. You do feel the transition. You do feel the difference between those two characters in that scene. I think it's really great. There are commenters who love Sarah McLachlan at the end of Becoming Part 2. How do you guys feel about? I mean, it gets me in the feels, certainly, but how do you feel about the use of a pop song that way rather than sort of going with what Beck did? Because I feel like that really dates that scene.
What?
I love it.
But then is it a problem that it's dated because the show takes place in the 90s? So
I mean, everything in this show is dated. It's not just Sarah McLachlan. It's I mean
the computers. I think you mentioned in another episode.
The CRTs.
No one has a cell phone.
I mean, Xander was skateboarding in the pilots. I mean,
I think there are episodes later where the pop music I find distracting, like even Buffy and Spike's second kiss. I forget the name of that artist, but they show her in the bronze earlier, and then like that I found maybe not because it was dating it, but just because it felt like it was promotion for that artist. I was like,
that's not the one with Amy Mann, right?
No, isn't Amy Mann? There's the
Goodbye to You.
Oh, she's in season 7. Amy Mann's in season 7. Oh, Conversations, isn't she? No, she's not in Conversations.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Wasn't she in the one where Harmony comes back?
Oh no! So the one where Harmony comes back, there's that band playing in the party. That's a famous band, but I don't know which one it is.
Not
a music.
With the music, I think the point is that the music might be dated, but the emotions, at least for me, that I feel they're still current. Like they don't.
Yeah,
I mean,
it resonates. It resonates. It definitely resonates. I just always think of Dr. Zhivago. The director has said that the one thing they got wrong with Dr. Zhivago were the hairstyles. There are people with beehives in Dr. Zhivago, which is not period specific. And now watching it, where the beehive is no longer in vogue, obviously, it sort of, I don't know if it takes you out. That's kind of my question, but I do notice it. And I listen to Sarah McLachlan. I listen to mostly depressed lady singers when I was in high school. So you're Tori Amos, you're Sarah McLachlan. So I guess to me, that music, where someone else might have heard that song for the first time in the show, it's very of a time and a place for me. And I think that's a danger with pop tunes. And one of the things they did with the bronze was they usually had unsigned artists singing. So you don't have that familiarity, the nostalgia, so forth. Amy Mann is one of the few that was actually had a successful career, if I remember correctly. But that is the end of my notes. And hello, Andrea. We were actually just wrapping up.
I was commenting off of the YouTube. I was enjoying it very much. I love the costume whisperer, who's wonderful.
Was there anything you wanted to throw out about Becoming? How do you feel about the episodes? Where does that land? Where does it land for you?
Part 2 is just fabulous. Just absolutely fabulous. I think part 2 is spectacular. I love the fact that Spike's there at all the key moments of Buffy's coming out. I find that very interesting. I think David as Angelus in season 2 is actually my favorite Angelus as well. And I like the music. I like the What was the one? The Amy Mann songs I thought were really terrific. I like the that sad one when Giles is going away.
Oh,
and they really feature.
Oh yeah. Again, I think that woman was unsigned, but yeah, that's the thing is the soundtrack for me because it's specific to the show is timeless when it's those pieces versus something that I was very like if they had played In the Arms of the Angel in a particular episode, let's say on Angel, it might.
You think it's too on the nose? It's sort of like you don't need the song to telegraph the emotion.
It dates is all I'm saying. Certainly the outfits date, so it's a weird complaint to have about that particular episode.
That's part of the charm. You at least I find it so. I don't find that objectionable. I enjoy movies from the 1930s and can't get much more dated than that. Unless it's movies from the 20s. Yeah, so I don't mind that. It's just
well, and again, I owned that album and listened to it quite a bit while playing Final Fantasy VII and not doing my homework. So,
well, you're all younger than me. I wasn't of the 90s, so I don't know. I just think it's
fair enough.
Delightful.
Well, let's so we are on to season 3. Come January, I'm thinking I'm actually going to be on Firefly. If I have not finished Buffy season 4, Angel season 1 by the end of the year, then I'm doing something wrong. So at a video a week, we should be able to wrap up the season by the end of December, and then I'm going to be doing why you should watch Firefly, and then an episode guide for the whole series with the movie. So I'm thinking in January, we should. I mean, it's up to you guys. We can stay on Buffy. I know not everyone who follows me is a fan of Firefly as well, but maybe this is the
just
opportunity.
Crazy talk.
Yeah, that's. I'm more a fan of Firefly than I am of Angel. So.
Fair enough.
Some enemies.
Plus, it's short, so people don't like it. Tough.
And I honestly cannot wait to. Poor Jack is privy to my ideas, and I've had an idea for Buffy versus Dracula since season 2. Like the way it opens as a bookend to the entire season. I just can't wait to do it. But Firefly has been there and needs to be done, and I think it'll be a good thing for the channel. But. So the last Saturday in December, I have looked up the date. I know it's holiday time for all of us. Boris brought up, perhaps during the holidays, we don't want to watch the gang fight in Dead Man's Party, which I think is a good point. That would be Anne, and then Faith, Hope, and Trick would be the 2 episodes for discussion in December. Are we all good with those?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep. What about skipping to amends and doing the Christmas episode?
It's an interesting idea. But that we're also skipping over Lover's Walk, doing that, and The Wish.
No, Lover's Walk.
Lover's Walk.
Lover's Walk.
I would prefer to keep it in chronological, sort of moving front to back, if you guys are good with that. So, Anne, Faith, Hope, and Trick. Warzone is mostly edited. That will be up Monday. For anyone watching who is at the Patreon $10 tier or higher, Jack and I, there were 11 reading requests this time, and they were everything from Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me to Henry V, which was daunting to say the least. Those are now published. There's 2 remaining that I have not gotten to the requestees, but the rest of them are up on the channel and available in the readings playlist. And we'll do another round of those next month.
Thank you so much for Dante.
Yeah, man, that was. I mean, it's important to do content that is refreshing and very different from the episode guides, and having Nathan's request was the first canto of Dante's Inferno, which I had never read and had no.
finish teaching Dante to my 10H.
Well, there's a reading of the canto now up on the channel, which I had to sort through and puzzle out. They're fun challenges for me, especially when I don't.
You're a Jabberwocky.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
That was great.
Yeah, that was. They're a lot. They are a lot of fun. But I also did the Lovers Walk speech this time, and someone requested just to do something that's one of your favorites, and I did a river runs through it, and the last 2 or 3 pages of a river runs through it are some of the most beautiful words in the English language. I'm very happy that we got to do that one, and I hope you guys check it out because that passage that I share is changed my life as Buffy did. So go check it out.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
Yeah, I've been really enjoying how you're doing the premieres for the episode guides now with the text or where people can chat. I think
the live stream version. Yeah, the live stream version. I'm on the fence because it's terrifying seeing everyone's live feedback while we actually watch the video. But yeah, it has been every time we get about halfway through, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. It's a lot of fun. So we'll probably, I don't know that Warzone will premiere that way, but sort of the major beats like Primeval and Restless I'll definitely use that format. But I think that's it. I just want to say thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Patreon's the reason I get to do this full time now. So I'm grateful. And November was a slow month, but I think I've worked out many of the kinks. So
someone made a donation in the live chat.
Oh, thank you, Tina. Cheers, everyone. Thanks for a great conversation. Thank you, and I appreciate the donation. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. Well, we are done.
Bye.
I'll see you guys in a couple weeks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.